Let us now come to another form of episodic memory, what is called as autobiographical memory. As the name itself suggests, autobiographical memory has to do with events and experiences of one's own life. So what happens when we have certain recollection of a specific life experiences, when you interpret them and you consider that these are the events and experiences that defines you, your life. So it's somewhere like your personal life narrative that constitutes the autobiographical memory. Usually autobiographical memory has the image based personal memory of unrepeated events of the life of the individual. But there is also a possibility that it might have facts similar to the personal memory. However, in this case it would be not image based, and therefore, the generic personal memory of the repeated events that can also become a part of autobiographical memory. So, one, we have the unrepeated personal life events, something that happened only once, but it was extremely significant for the individual concerned. And you have a very clear image based personal memory of it. One single event, highly personally relevant, and you know that such events will not be repeated in life. The likelihood is very little because of its uniqueness. Still we have the image based personal memory of it. The second aspect what we discussed was that there could be non image based memory also of facts that are similar to personal memory. And third, we also discussed that there could be repeated events of the generic personal memory, and therefore, when I remember my name, the name of my parents, siblings, other members of the family, friends, their family members, and many of those things which has connection to the self, they are considered as part of autobiographical memory. And therefore, the factors that affect other forms of memory, they are also supposed to affect the organizational process of autobiographical memory. One interesting thing you will find in autobiographical memory, what is called as infantile amnesia. Amnesia, of course, is not the normal sequence of forgetting of events. It is a disorder, but an infantile amnesia is considered to be perfectly normal. What happens in this case? Let us take one of our life events and then try to understand what actually this means. If I ask you to go back to your earlier periods of life and recollect events, significant events, till whatever time period you can go back to. And usually majority of us will have a recollection of some of the significant events, say when you were 5 years old, 4 years old, but only significant ones. Many day to day experiences will not be recollected, simply because we have crossed substantial period of time from that very stage. Therefore, the life events of the first few years, usually up to 3 years, the chances are that we as human beings, we forget, we completely forget. And even thereafter, although we have a memory of it, we have the recollection of only significant events, not everything. This very inability of us not to be able to remember events of the first 2-3 years of life is called infantile amnesia, because it has to do with the earlier period of life. Therefore, it is called infantile. Amnesia, of course, is forgetfulness, but remember, infantile amnesia is not at all considered to be abnormal. It is not a pathology, although we find the word amnesia here. An interesting aspect of autobiographical memory is what is called as flashbulb memory. There is no mechanism, it is called spatial mechanism hypothesis by Brown and Kulig. Brown and Kulig, they proposed a hypothesis, it is called a spatial mechanism hypothesis, which says that spatial memories of events which has extremely high degree of surprise and consequence attached to it, they have a better memory. Okay. So, if there is something which had a heightened degree of surprise embedded into it, okay, or the consequence was something that is unforgettable, the chances are that we will remember that specific moment, and that is called as flashbulb memory. Now, flashbulb memory basically is just one type of autobiographical memory. Now, unlike the episodic memory that we discussed, especially the eyewitness memory, okay, in flashbulb memory, it is basically a recall of location, date, time and imagery. And what do we have? We have a vivid snapshot of the moments and its consequences. Okay. So, surprise has to be there, the consequence has to be there, and therefore, where did it happen, what time, what was the date, okay, and the image which is based on a vivid snapshots of the sequence of events, that is what constitutes flashbulb memory. Therefore, flashbulb memory has phenomenon of vivid memories of important events, but once again just similar to eyewitness memory, it is also prone to distortion, and therefore, it need not be accurate in nature. Okay. Usually in flashbulb memory, it is expected that you will always have a memory of something which was unexpected. Therefore, there is an element of surprise here. Okay. And because surprise is one of the basic emotions, therefore, the unexpected surprise component of that very event also emotionally arouses you. No? So, therefore, the event has high degree of emotional arousal attached to it, and therefore, it becomes part of your flashbulb memory. Three things are important for flashbulb memory. One, the significance of the event, how personally significant the event is to you. Two, what was the consequence. Okay. So, more dire the consequences, the higher are the chances that it will be remembered. Why? Because things which has higher consequences or dire consequences will induce a heightened degree of emotional arousal within you. Okay. So, these three things becomes major determinants for flashbulb memory. Look at this Sikh lady who experienced violence twice in her life. Once in 1947 when she was young and India was divided into two halves, India and Pakistan, and again in 1984 when the anti-Sikh riot took place in India.
पुलिस आई, दरवाज़ा खटकाया, बोला भी सरकार आया कि नहीं आया, बोला नहीं आया, बोला कि उधर नागपाड़े में उधर चाकू मारा किसी ने उसको, तो अभी एडमिट हॉस्पिटल में, जज हॉस्पिटल में जाओ तुम देखो। सन 47 में हमारे माँ बाप मर गए थे। सन 47 में जो झगड़ा हुआ, छोटे छोटे हम बड़े हुए, मैं 2.5 बरस की थी, अब बड़े होकर हमारा ये हाल।
For one of the National Geography programs, one Vietnam War photographer was interviewed. He was shown his own photographs and asked to recollect, rethink, okay, years after the passage of the war, what actually had taken place, what happens to him. Look in this very video.
When I look at these pictures, I feel so hopelessly sad. To make these pictures is very difficult. When you took these pictures and you knew you had these pictures, Sunlight. xin lỗi.
Bức ảnh này là bức ảnh đau khổ, tàn khốc, chết chóc, mất mát.
This is a hard-hitting picture about pain,
Tôi có gửi đi rồi
cruelty,
nhưng mà
and death.
Now, if you look at these two videos, in the first case, okay, the woman is in a position to recollect her experience, no, what time of the day, what did the policeman say, okay, and making a comparison between the two experience of communal violence. Okay. In the second event, okay, although this photographer considered the event to be significant event to be clicked, when he is re-exposed to his own photographs, okay, the consequence of the war, the emotions overpowers his memory. Okay. Therefore, the three things which we discussed right now, the personal significance of the event, the consequence of the event, and then the emotional arousal that is attached to the memory of the event, these three things become extremely important as far as flashbulb memory is concerned. Having discussed episodic memory, the flashbulb and the testimony, we shall now discuss semantic memory. Semantic, as we have been referring to, it means meaningfulness. Therefore, the structured record of facts, the concepts, the skills, okay, these constitute the semantic memory. So, it is basically the retention of the abstract knowledge, meaning of the words, symbols, ideas, and the rules that govern them. Okay. So, this memory system basically stores the general knowledge that are not associated with specific places and time of acquisition. Remember, in the case of episodic memory, time of the event, the consequence, okay, the location, these were important parameters on the basis of which the whole sequence of event was broken into episodes. Given what you call the association with personal significance and with the forensic significance, we further divided it into forensic and with eyewitness and flashbulb memory. Whereas, because semantic memory has to do more with the concepts, the rules that govern it, the words that represent them, therefore, they are supposed to be basically free from the time of acquisition and the place, the location in which you learned this. Okay. Therefore, basically what happens here, you have a network of nodes, okay, and each of the node they represent the basic concepts. The more and more you spread the network, higher and better is your semantic memory. Okay. The much better is the understanding of yours with respect to that specific concept. There are four important things in semantic memory. They play important role in organizing the content. First is the semantic network. Okay. We talked about the nodes and the network that is formed. We will talk about it again. So, semantic network, concepts, the prototypes and the exemplars. Okay. So, we will talk about all four of them one by one. Now, semantic network is nothing but it is basically knowledge representing meaningful relationship among the concepts. So, when you think of an animal, okay, the moment you think of animal, you consider that okay, animal by default means that it would be living, okay, because we have understood to classify world in terms of living and non-living creatures. Okay. Now, you think if it is say living, then it will definitely be, it could be a mammal. You think of one good example of a mammal which is an animal, you think of sheep. Okay. The moment you think of sheep, you think okay, it has fur. The moment you think of fur, you think okay, other animals also have furs. For instance, you think of polar bear, you connect polar bear is also a mammal which is also an animal and a living creature. Polar bear, they live on snow. So, this is how the network expands. Okay. You have nodes, each node representing an important concept, and then you start spreading the network. The more and more holistic is the network that you derive, okay, and the interconnections that you establish between different nodes, okay, the more and more better is your semantic memory. What are concepts? These are nothing but simple mental categories that are used in organizing the objects or the events. Okay. So, you think of an object, you think of an event, okay, and therefore, you form a mental category, okay, that is called concept. Now, prototypes are the best representatives of these categories. Okay. So, they are basically the best examples of any concept that comes to your mind the moment you think of that very concept. Okay. Think for instance, you are told a word tree. The moment you hear the word tree, a representation comes to your mind, a mental representation. Now, look at your screen. In most likelihood, the line drawing that you see of a tree is perhaps the image that you draw. Okay. I have performed this exercise several times in the classroom, and let me share one thing with you. Most of the students in the class where I have tried this example, who are from northern part of India, they usually have the representation of a tree like this. Okay. Actually, you have something like this, okay, this very example, but then some of the students who are from the extreme northern side, the mountain area, they usually they have something like this. Okay. So, depending on what type of exposure you have, what type of experience you have of a tree, you will have the ready made example, the image of that very concept. Okay. So, this is what is called as prototype. The category is told to you and the best example that comes to your mind that represents that very category. Now, tree could be of anything, banyan tree, pine tree, mango tree, any type of a tree. But depending on the mostly visible tree in your locality, you develop an example, a mental image, that is the prototype. Now, we come to exemplars. You think of an insect, okay, and you have a grasshopper in your mind. Okay. So, you think of a bicycle, okay, a mode of transport, and something comes to your mind. So, these are again the best example of the exemplars. What happens in the case of exemplars? Okay. These are once again the best examples that would come to your mind. Now, what we have discussed? We have the nodes which represents the concept. Each of these concepts are interconnected to several other concepts, which basically helps you form a network. To represent a concept, we have a prototype and we have the best example that would try to explain the concept for yourself. Okay. So that when you look at certain phenomena in the world, using your semantic network, you can think of whole lot of things. Remember that things are not so crystal clear and things are not presented in an isolated way, the way we have discussed here in the example. But then we have to simplify it for our understanding. Okay. As a living being, we cannot live in a complex system where most of the things are you are not capable of interpreting them. And therefore, semantic networks plays extremely important role here. Now, when we come to long term memory, organization of information in long term memory is purely subjective. Okay. How you would organize it is your choice, okay, is your convenience. Images of informations, okay, can be concrete or it could be abstract. Okay. So, if you are told something like say old, and if you have seen your elderly grandparents in your house, you will have somewhere an image of what is what is meant by the word old. If you hear the word brick, if you hear the word pencil, okay. So, many of these things will have a very concrete image that it will generate. Many other concepts might not generate concrete images. No? Say for instance, if you are told know that there was a king who was very honest. Okay. Now, there could be examples of know what honesty meant, okay. But then honesty cannot create a very clear cut concrete image in your mind. Okay. Similarly, if you are told no that he was very hard working, okay, you can think of whatever type of activity this character was involved in the story, and accordingly you can think of, you can intensify the engagement of that very individual in that given activity to visualize what it would mean to be hard working in this very scenario. Okay. Similarly, if you are told many of those qualifications which are more qualitative in nature, okay, like honesty, okay, you have difficulty in creating clear cut images. Therefore, when we combine these things in the long term memory, we might have images of the concrete words, and we might have certain informations which are more and more abstract in nature. And of course, because it is like this, therefore, the learning of, the storage of the concrete words would be much more easier compared to abstract words. Another interesting thing observed in long term memory is what is called as tip of tongue phenomena. Tip of tongue phenomena basically means that when we store the information and try to recollect it, we fail to do so, although we feel as if things are readily available, it is somewhere on the tip of the tongue, but it is not making its way out of the mouth, and therefore, you are not able to recollect it. Okay. So, imagine something like this, snake inside a burrow. Okay. So, this is the burrow, there is a snake, it comes out of the burrow and again it goes down. Okay. So, it is something like that, you feel as if the event is about to be recollected. You can very easily extract the information from your long term storage, but somehow you keep struggling and you are finally not able to do so. Okay. This is called tip of tongue phenomena. And why does this happen? This basically is a phenomena which supports the fact that the storage of information in the long term memory is very, very organized. Okay. So, if you want to make a random recollection attempt, the information will not be very readily available to you. So, if you move in a sequential order, okay, in an organized order, because information is stacked in an organized manner, retrieval becomes easier. Because information is stored in the organized manner and you start making random recollection, then you fail to do so.